I found the wallet lying on the edge of the fountain outside Whitmore Tower, just as the morning crowd was spilling out of the subway. The rush hour noise was a blur, heels clicking, horns blaring, voices overlapping. But the flash of black leather caught my eye like a whisper cutting through chaos. It wasn't the kind of wallet a person forgot by accident. The leather was smooth and perfectly kept, monogrammed in gold, ARW. I picked it up, half expecting someone to shout that it was theirs. No one did. I looked around. The fountain gleamed under the clear sky, surrounded by glass buildings that felt too tall, too polished, too expensive for a girl like me. I wasn't supposed to be here. I was only cutting through this part of downtown because the bus broke down, and I had to walk the last stretch to the bookstore where I worked. When I flipped open the wallet, I froze. There were crisp bills, platinum cards, a license, and a single photograph tucked behind the ID slot. A little boy sitting on a man's shoulders, both laughing, sunlight catching their faces. The man had silver hair, a sharp jaw, and eyes that even in a photograph looked intelligent and distant. Alexander R. Whitmore. The name alone made my stomach tighten. Everyone in this city knew it. Heir to Whitmore Private Bank, old money, discreet power. I'd read about him once in the business section while organizing newspapers at work. A man whose fortune had built a skyline. I should have handed the wallet to security or dropped it at the nearest police station. That would have been the sensible, city-smart thing to do, but I wasn't sensible or city-smart. Not yet. I'd moved here 3 months ago from Maple Ridge, a small town where people left notes on each other's doors and borrowed sugar like it was currency. After my father's heart attack, I'd taken on 2 jobs to keep our family home. He was recovering, thank God, but the hospital bills had taken everything. I didn't have much left besides a stubborn belief that doing the right thing mattered, even when no one noticed. So I decided to return it myself. Whitmore Tower loomed like a monument. Glass, marble, silence. The kind of place where every sound felt like an intrusion. The lobby alone could have fit my entire apartment building. I hesitated at the front desk, clutching the wallet in both hands. The receptionist gave me a look that could slice through steel. "Can I help you?" I found something that belongs to Mr. Whitmore," I said, my voice catching on the edge of nerves. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's urgent." She pursed her lips. "Mr. Whitmore doesn't take unannounced visitors. You can leave it here." Her tone made it clear that here meant with someone who will probably never mention it again. "I'd rather give it to him directly," I said before thinking. Her eyebrows lifted in that sharp way that said, "You clearly don't know who you're talking about." She was about to dismiss me when a voice, low and even, cut through the air behind us. "It's all right, Clara. I'll handle it." I turned, and my breath caught. He was exactly as I remembered from the photo, only sharper. His silver hair gleamed under the lobby lights, his tailored suit a perfect blend of control and quiet authority. His presence was magnetic, not because of charm, but because he carried the air of a man used to being obeyed. His gaze landed on the wallet in my hands. "Where did you find that?" "At the fountain outside," I said. "This morning." He studied me, unblinking. The silence stretched long enough to make my palms sweat. Then slowly he walked closer. "You came all the way here to return it?" "Yes." He extended his hand, the movement precise. "Thank you, Miss..." "Emma," I said quickly. "Emma Calloway." He nodded once. "Miss Calloway." He took the wallet, flipping it open as though to verify nothing was missing. I half expected him to find fault, to assume I'd taken something. The way his eyes flicked up told me he'd considered it. "I appreciate your honesty," he said at last, though his tone didn't match the words. "But you shouldn't have troubled yourself. Most people would have left it to security." I wasn't sure who to trust with something like this, I said. Something flickered in his eyes. Interest, perhaps, or skepticism. That's an unusual answer. I'm an unusual person. The words slipped out before I could stop them. For the first time, a hint of a smile ghosted his lips. Not amusement, recognition. Then just as quickly, the moment vanished. He turned the wallet over in his hands like a man turning over evidence. "You don't expect a reward?" "No." He tilted his head slightly. "Everyone expects something, Miss Calloway." "I don't," I said quietly. He studied me another moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded. Very well. Thank you for your integrity. That was my cue to leave. I nodded, turned, and walked back toward the revolving doors, heart hammering, face hot. As they closed behind me, I felt his gaze on my back like a shadow that refused to let go. The next morning, I saw him again. At first, I thought I was imagining it. He stood across the street from the bookstore, half hidden behind a parked car, reading a newspaper. But when I went inside, he moved too, crossing casually to the cafe across the block. For the rest of the day, I tried to convince myself it was coincidence. But when the shop closed and I stepped outside, he was still there. Mr. Whitmore? I called, my voice unsure. He lowered the newspaper, and that same steady gaze met mine. You're observant. I crossed my arms, trying to steady my pulse. You followed me? He didn't deny it. I wanted to be sure. Of what? That your act of goodwill wasn't just that. An act. My throat tightened. So you think I returned your wallet for... What? Attention? He didn't flinch. Most people who approach me have motives. I wanted to understand yours. I let out a shaky breath. And did you? He paused. Not entirely. The streetlight caught his features, tired, proud, and strangely lost for a man who had everything. I felt something shift in me. Pity, maybe. Or something softer I didn't want to name. He stepped closer, enough for me to smell faint cologne and clean linen. Where do you work? Here, I said, pointing to the bookstore. 6 days a week. You're overqualified, he said immediately, as if reading a file only he could see. I frowned. You don't know that. I know you took the time to come to my office instead of dropping the wallet at security. That kind of initiative is wasted selling paperbacks. I stiffened. I don't mind working here. I'm sure you don't, he said, his voice lowering. But I could use someone with your sense of discretion. I blinked. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to stop struggling, he said simply, as if that were the most natural thing in the world. I hesitated. Why would you do that for someone you don't trust? His mouth curved, not quite a smile. Because I trust curiosity more than I trust comfort. You didn't take the easy route. I respect that. I swallowed hard. What kind of job? Personal assistant, temporary, until my regular staff returns. It should have been a simple decision. Say no, thank him, walk away. But my rent was due in 4 days. My father's medical bills were waiting on my next transfer. I'd been living on coffee and hope. Still, something inside me resisted. You don't even know me. Then I'll find out, he said quietly. 10 o'clock tomorrow. My office. He slipped a small card into my hand, his touch brief but steady. Then he turned and walked toward his waiting car, sleek, dark, and silent as he disappeared inside. I stared down at the card. It was heavy paper embossed with gold, just his name, number, and address. No title, no company. Alexander R. Whitmore. That night, I sat on the edge of my narrow bed, the card glinting under the lamplight. I didn't know what unsettled me more, that a man like him had followed me, or that I wanted to understand why. I told myself it was just a job, a chance to survive. But deep down, beneath the logic and fear, something else stirred, an awareness I couldn't quite name. Maybe it was the way he'd looked at me, not like a stranger, but like a mirror he wasn't ready to face. The next morning, I ironed my best blouse, tied my hair back, and took the subway to Whitmore Tower. By the time I stepped through the glass doors, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever waited on the other side of that meeting, my life would never go back to what it was before I picked up that wallet. The first week at Whitmore Tower felt like stepping into another kind of silence. The kind that hummed with importance. Everything about his office was immaculate. Chrome fixtures, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a single painting above the fireplace. No clutter, no trace of warmth, just order. Alexander Whitmore moved through that space as if it belonged not only to him, but to time itself. Every step deliberate, every glance weighted. He didn't speak unless necessary. And when he did, his words landed softly, but carried the kind of gravity that made people straighten unconsciously. And me? I tried to be invisible. My tasks were simple: filter emails, organize meeting notes, track charitable donations. But even in silence, he seemed aware of every movement I made. Once I caught him watching as I refilled his coffee. His gaze wasn't inappropriate, just analytical, like he was trying to solve a problem. I told myself I didn't mind the distance. It made it easier to stay grounded, but there was something about the stillness between us. Thick, like the pause between breaths. That made me restless. By the end of the second week, I noticed small things. The way his hand lingered a second longer than necessary when passing me a folder. The faint change in his tone when he said my name, like it had shifted from formality to curiosity. Once, as I was leaving for lunch, he said, almost absently, "You walk differently when you're thinking." I froze. "I didn't realize you noticed." He looked up from his screen, his expression unreadable. "I notice everything." Then he returned to his work, as if he hadn't just confessed something intimate. By the third week, I began learning the shape of his solitude. His office stayed lit long after everyone else left. He ate dinner alone, sometimes reading the same letter over and over before tucking it away. Once, when I brought him files late, I glimpsed a photograph on his desk, a woman with dark hair and gentle eyes. He saw me looking. "She was my wife," he said quietly. There was no warning, no guarded edge to his voice. Just quiet acceptance of a wound that never fully closed. "She passed 8 years ago," he continued. "Car accident. Our son was in the back seat. He lived." I swallowed hard. "I'm sorry," he nodded once. "You didn't cause it, Miss Calloway. Sympathy won't change the facts." His words were sharp, but his tone wasn't. It was tired. I hesitated before asking, "Do you still talk to him? Your son?" He looked at me then, directly, piercingly. "He's studying abroad. He's fine without me." The way he said "without me" told a different story. I wanted to say something comforting, but the distance between us wasn't built for comfort. So instead I offered silence, the kind that said I understood. He didn't dismiss me right away that evening. Instead, he poured himself a drink and asked if I wanted one. I declined, but stayed. We spoke about nothing and everything: the view, the city, the strange loneliness of success. It was the first time I heard him laugh softly. It didn't sound practiced. After that night, things changed. He started asking about my life, not out of politeness, but with genuine curiosity. I told him about Maple Ridge, about my father's recovery, about how I'd always wanted to study literature but couldn't afford college. "You read more than most people I know," he said once, flipping through a book I'd left on my desk. "It's cheaper than therapy," I replied. He smiled faintly. "I wouldn't know. I've never tried either." That made me laugh, and something in his eyes softened, like he was quietly pleased to have caused it. The line between professionalism and something else blurred slowly, delicately. He began to trust me with tasks beyond clerical work: private memos, family trusts, even personal letters. He'd glance at me sometimes when speaking to board members, as if gauging my reaction before finalizing a decision. I never gave advice, but I think he liked knowing someone was quietly listening. Still, the air between us was heavy with the things we didn't say. Once, late at night, I found him standing by the window, sleeves rolled, staring at the skyline. His reflection merged with the lights, strong, controlled, yet strangely alone. "You should go home, Emma," he said without turning. "So should you." He looked at me then, his face unguarded. "This tower feels quieter when you're not in it." The words stole my breath. I didn't know how to respond, and maybe he didn't expect me to. He simply walked past, brushing against me lightly, the air between us humming with unspoken warmth. The midpoint came on a Friday night. A storm of headlines hit the financial world. Someone inside Whitmore. Bank had leaked confidential documents about executive bonuses. The press descended like vultures. His office phone rang nonstop. His voice, normally so composed, grew strained. When he finally dismissed the staff, I stayed behind. "Can I help?" I asked. He looked up, eyes tired. "No one can." I ignored that. You shouldn't be alone right now. He leaned back, exhaustion shadowing his features. You think loneliness is a choice? Yes, I said softly. It always is. Something in him cracked at that. He exhaled, long and low. You're brave to say that to me. I'm not brave. I'm just not afraid to see you. He stared at me like no one had ever said that before. Then he said quietly, My wife used to tell me that my greatest flaw was control. I didn't know how to need anyone. I hesitated. Do you want to learn how? He laughed once, dry, disbelieving, but the sound broke halfway. For the first time, he looked unsure. And in that moment, I saw not the banker, not the heir, but the man beneath, the one still carrying the ache of what he'd lost. He rubbed his temples. You shouldn't be here, Emma. Then tell me to go, I whispered. He didn't. Instead, he reached for my hand, stopping halfway, his fingers trembling slightly before pulling back. I'm sorry. I shouldn't. It's all right, I said. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was fragile, suspended between fear and trust. He finally said, You remind me that I'm still human. I'd forgotten. That confession broke something open in both of us. After that night, everything felt heightened. The simplest moments carried weight. His glance when I entered a room, the brush of his sleeve against mine, the quiet warmth when our eyes met across the conference table. He stopped questioning my motives. He stopped keeping distance. And maybe that was why it hurt more when I discovered he'd had me investigated weeks earlier. I found out by accident. A call came through from his head of security. The man assumed I already knew. The background check came back clear, sir. Nothing suspicious about Miss Calloway? The world tilted. I stood frozen as Alexander looked up from his desk, realizing what I'd overheard. Emma, he began, his voice low. I can explain. Don't bother. My throat felt tight. You thought I came for your money, didn't you? He stood, eyes heavy with regret. I've had people steal from me, lie to me. I couldn't risk, so you spied on me? He didn't deny it. Yes, and I was wrong. The words should have helped. They didn't. I turned toward the door. You can't build trust on suspicion. He caught my wrist gently. I didn't know how else to protect myself. Then maybe that's the problem, I said softly. You keep protecting yourself from the very thing you need. He let go, defeated. The air between us fractured, still tender, but laced with hurt. As I walked out, he said quietly, You told me loneliness was a choice. So is forgiveness. I didn't look back, but my heart clenched at the sound of his voice. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every memory replayed. His guarded kindness, his rare laughter, the quiet way he'd said you remind me I'm still human. For the first time, I realized what I'd done. I'd let him in, and somehow, despite his walls and my fear, he'd let me in too. But trust once cracked doesn't heal easily. When I returned to the office the next morning, he wasn't there. Just a single envelope on my desk, written in his careful hand. For the first time in years, I care whether someone believes in me. And that someone is you, A.W. I sat down slowly, clutching the note. The city outside glowed with morning light. But inside, all I could feel was the echo of his absence, and the truth that I didn't want him to disappear from my life. Not now. Not after everything he'd started to mean. The Monday after he disappeared, Whitmore Tower felt hollow. His office lights stayed off. His assistant, Clara, said he'd taken personal leave, though no one dared to ask more. Rumors spread quickly. Some said he'd flown to Switzerland to salvage a deal. Others whispered about the scandal brewing within the bank. I didn't care about the gossip. I just wanted to know he was all right. 3 days passed before I saw him again. It was late afternoon. I was leaving the office when the elevator doors opened, and there he was. He looked nothing like the man I'd last seen. His tie was loosened, his eyes shadowed, his composure fractured in ways that made my chest ache. He stepped out slowly, and for the first time since I'd met him, he seemed unsure of himself. Emma, he said quietly, as if my name were a fragile thing. I froze. "You shouldn't be here." "Neither should you," he said. "I told them to give you the week off." I didn't take it. A faint, tired smile touched his mouth. "Of course you didn't." The silence between us stretched. Soft, brittle, full of all the words we hadn't said. Finally he broke it. "I owe you an apology." "You already gave me one," I said. "Not the kind that matters." He paused, searching for words. "I built a life around control, Emma. When my wife died, I told myself emotion was weakness. I hid behind suspicion, behind money. And then you walked into my lobby holding my wallet like it meant something. And suddenly, I didn't know who I was anymore." I swallowed hard. "You think I changed you?" "I think you reminded me I was still capable of change." For a moment, neither of us moved. The elevator chimed behind him. He stepped closer instead of leaving. "You can fire me if you want," I whispered. He shook his head. "I don't want to lose you." His words trembled, but not from fear, from honesty. A few days later, everything collapsed. News broke that Whitmore Bank's partner firm had been laundering funds. His name wasn't directly involved, but the media didn't care. They wanted a villain, and his family legacy made him the perfect one. Cameras surrounded the building. Headlines screamed betrayal and corruption. Inside, he stayed calm, too calm. He gave orders, made calls, issued statements, all while ignoring the exhaustion painted across his face. But that night, when the reporters left and the office emptied, I found him sitting alone in the dark, his desk littered with files and unopened letters. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured again when I walked in. "I'm not leaving." He exhaled, long and shaky. "It's strange. When everything falls apart, you expect to feel panic. But all I feel is relief." I sat across from him. "Relief?" He nodded faintly. "For years I've lived behind a wall of expectation. My father's, the board's, society's. Now for the first time, there's nothing left to hide behind." He looked up at me then, and the quiet ache in his eyes broke something inside me. "You once said loneliness was a choice," he said. "Maybe I've been choosing it all along." Then stop. His lips curved slightly. "Just like that?" "Yes," I whispered. "Just like that." He leaned back, tired eyes studying me. "You make it sound simple." "It is," I said. "You just have to let someone in." A long silence followed. Then, very softly, he said, "What if the only person I want to let in is you?" My heart stilled. He stood then, slowly, like every movement required effort. "Come with me." He led me up to the rooftop terrace, a place I'd never been allowed before. The night air was warm. The city spread out beneath us like a sea of glittering light. For the first time in weeks, the sky was clear. "I used to come here with my wife," he said quietly. "She loved the view. Said it made the world feel smaller, manageable." I looked at him. "Does it feel that way now?" He shook his head. "No. Now it just feels honest." He turned to face me fully then, his expression stripped of every layer he'd ever used to protect himself. "I'm afraid," he admitted. "Not of losing everything, of being seen for who I really am." "I already see you," I said. He stepped closer, hesitated, then reached out. His fingers brushed mine, a careful, trembling touch that carried more emotion than words ever could. "I don't want to hurt you," he whispered. "You won't. You don't know that." "I trust you," I said softly. Something in him broke then, not in weakness but in surrender. He cupped my face gently, his thumb brushing away a tear I hadn't realized had fallen. "You're trembling," he murmured. "So are you." He smiled faintly, the smallest, saddest smile I'd ever seen. It's been a long time since I felt anything this real. And then, for the first time, he kissed me. It wasn't rushed or desperate. It was slow, reverent, uncertain. A question, not a claim. The kind of kiss that asked permission instead of taking it. When he pulled back, his breath was unsteady. "You're shaking," he said again. I met his eyes, my voice barely a whisper. "I've never done this before." Understanding dawned slowly, gently. His eyes widened, not with surprise, but with tenderness. "Emma, I've never been with anyone," I said softly. "Not because I was waiting for perfection, just because I needed to trust someone enough to feel safe." He went still, every trace of arrogance gone. "Then I'll make sure you are." There was no urgency in what followed, just quiet, wordless understanding. He held me like something precious, not fragile. When his lips met mine again, it wasn't fire. It was warmth, the kind that builds steady and sure, until it becomes a light you can stand in. And when we finally let go, it wasn't about possession or passion. It was peace, the kind I'd never known before. The next morning, sunlight poured through the glass walls, golden and clean. I woke in the quiet of his penthouse, the city stretching far below us. He was standing by the window, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, coffee in hand. The man who'd once looked like he owned the world now looked like someone who'd finally stopped fighting it. When he turned and saw me, something softened in his expression. I didn't think I'd ever wake up feeling light again, I smiled. "You're allowed to." He set down his cup and crossed the room, sitting beside me. "Do you regret any of it?" "No," he exhaled, relief flickering across his features. "Good, because I don't either." He took my hand, fingers tracing my wrist absently. "You know, when I first met you, I thought you wanted something from me." "I did," I said. He raised a brow. "Oh, your wallet?" I teased. He laughed then, quiet, genuine. The sound wrapped around me like sunlight. "You could have taken it," he said. "I could have," I agreed, "but I wanted to return it. It wasn't mine." He nodded slowly. "And now?" I looked at him, smiling faintly. "Now I just want you to stop looking at everything like it's about to be taken from you." He grew quiet, his thumb brushing my hand. "You've changed the way I see everything, Emma, even myself." Weeks later, the scandal passed. The investigation cleared him. The bank survived, though he seemed to care less about that now. He began spending afternoons volunteering for a foundation his wife once supported. Sometimes he asked me to join him. Other times we just walked through the park together, no longer boss and assistant, but two people learning how to exist without fear. One afternoon, as we passed the fountain where it all began, he stopped. "That's where you found it," he said, nodding toward the water's edge. I smiled. "Yes, you should be more careful." He slipped his hand into mine. "If I hadn't been careless that day, I wouldn't have found you." I laughed softly. "You didn't find me. I returned what was yours." He looked at me then, eyes warm, voice steady, and I've been trying to return the favor ever since. Sometimes I still think about that morning. The wallet, the decision, the moment everything shifted. I'd thought I was just doing the right thing, but maybe in a way, I was finding the piece of my life that had been missing all along, the place where trust feels like home. He once told me he didn't believe in coincidences. Now, when I wake up beside him and see the sunlight catching the silver in his hair, I understand why. Because some things aren't coincidences at all. They're beginnings disguised as accidents, and love, quiet, steady, unexpected, is the only fortune that ever mattered. If this story touched your heart, subscribe for more slow-burn romance stories filled with emotion and trust. Comment your favorite part. Was it when she returned the wallet? When he finally let down his guard? Or when love found them both in the quiet? And don't forget to share this story with someone who still believes that real love begins with honesty,